Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another week of Deck Report. So, today is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be split into two parts. Part one is going to be me talking about my experiences in the past week, as well as like the potential matchups, and I'm going to do like a few test hands just to show a few things that people probably don't know. Uh, what you can do with the Centurion deck, and people don't often think about because just the other day I was playing like at locals, and I was doing against one of my opponents, and they immediately thought about calamity lock when I was playing the deck, and I just went into like end board. They did not calamity lock at all, and I think it's good for you to realize that for two reasons. Reasons number one is we don't know if Konami has in their game plan to ban this card in the next Forbidden Limited list. It already got forbidden in the OCG, and Centurions are doing fairly well despite this card not being in there. The other thing is, despite how Centurion not being as popular this format, I feel like after the next wave of support in Light of Destruction, the deck could get more popular, and people are just going to gravitate it towards the fact that it can end people's turns, quote unquote. The next portion I'm going to do, which will probably be a second part after this video, is talking about one particular deck that I faced in the past weekend. And that deck has been getting a little bit more popularity. It's a deck that I actually thought about, but I never discussed in this channel, uh, which is like the only deck that I lost to in the past week. But yeah, um, so last week, I faced Floowanderies, I faced Voiceless Voice, I faced one particular Snake Eye variant, I faced Testino OTK, I faced Branded, and I faced Fire Kings. My only loss was to the special Snake Eye build, and that is the deck I'll be talking about in part 2 of this video. Outside of that, this deck list is exactly the same as week 14, so I'm not going to be showing you the list. It's just going to be the same list. So if you just want to see the list and you're new to this channel, just go to my prior deck report video and you will see the full list over there. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be checking out a few test hands. This test hand is pretty much a typical Centurion hand that you always have. I kind of want to see if I can get one that involves like any sort of Bystials, because depending on like the hand and if it can be a starting hand. For example, this is not a starting hand at all, unfortunate. There are some particular plays that people just often miss when that can be possible with this deck. This is a hand that can work. Let's summarize it. We have 3 hand traps, 1 Bystial starter, and we have our 1 card starter, which is Emblema. For this particular hand, what we're going to be doing is we're going to activate Emblema. We're just going to put the rest of the cards right over here. Have you see them. So this is the rest of the hand. We're activating Emblema Oath. Emblema is going to set Stand Up Centurion. Until Ghost Ogre gets more popular, that is the best card that you can set out of Emblema Oath. If you already have access to Field Spell, then you just set one of your Centurion monsters, or if you already have a full Centurion setup, you can just start grabbing cards like Phalanx or Bonds. So we're going to flip the Stand-Up Centurion, and with Stand-Up Centurion, we're going to be sending our DD Crow to the graveyard. And this is going to be setting particularly Primera, So let's separate our hand right here. So I'm going to show you the typical play that Centur-ION always does, and then I'm going to explain the narrow ground that we're going to be doing that's going to be a little bit different. So our first play is going to be Primera. Primera is going to be adding Trudea. Your normal Trudea. Trudea is going to put herself into the spell and trap zone. Trudea is going to place Emeth. And then you spawn Emeth. And then you go into Legatia. And then you have your draw for turn. And then Legatia effect is going to place the Primera in the spell and trap zone. So let us separate this hand just to avoid confusion. So the hand is still here at this end. And this is the particular end board that you used to always see with Centur-ION. This is in the graveyard. This in spell and trap. In your opponent's turn, you just do this, and the standard combo is just going to Crimson Dragon, and then Crimson Dragon into Calamity. That is the typical board that you usually do with the Centur-ION cards. However, despite how powerful this combo is and how it can play around certain cards, it's very, very vulnerable to like disruption. And if you know your opponent is in a deck, is playing a deck or strategy that just have a lot of strong disruption cards, like Droplets, Cosmic Cyclone, just give a few examples, and you know that they already have a way of dealing with Crimson Dragon, then you're just going to lose, because not only did they deal with your way of getting Calamity Lock, but you already committed cards onto the board, and that is going to make your opponent capitalize on resources. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the scenario where the Primera was placed. And we still have these 3 cards in our hand. So this is going to be the part where the Bystials play a very important role. We're going to ignore the Lubellion for now, and we're just going to show you the Druisworm. So one particular thing setup that I like doing is, instead of placing Primera, I place Trudea. We use Trudea's effect. Trudea will spawn herself back into a spell and trap, and then we'll spawn Primera. Then what we do is we're spawning the Primera. Primera activates, and instead of adding like another monster, what I typically like doing is I add Centurion Phalanx to my hand. And then at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to banish the DD Crow for Druisworm. And then we synchro these two into Bear on the Floor. And you're probably thinking, well, this is not like a typical setup. This is not something that like is going to do enough. This setup is a lot more different than like the typical setup with Calamity. Despite this end board being way less impactful, this end board is a lot safer, and it like plays around more cards. Now with you have the negate from Baron, you have the follow up from Trudea, you have negation from Imperm, and you have disruption from Phalanx. And this is what I'm talking about, like how you can diversify your end boards. Like now you have multiple layers of disruption from multiple sides, and your opponent has to find a way to deal with all of them. Now let's say, for example, we actually did have the Lubellion. Well, in this instance, Lubellion is a lot better, because what we can do here is we go back to the Primera stage. These two are back. These two are still in the deck. or we're in the stage of stand-up Centurion rather. This is still our hand. We're back at this phase. So something that you can do that is actually a bit different is you'll use stand-up Centurion, you'll send the Druid Swarm, and we'll place Primera. Or rather, we'll just place Trudea. Trudea is just gonna make it a lot better. We use Trudea's effect, spell monster zone, Trudea's effect, place Primera. We'll use Primera's effect. Primera is going to add. We're going to add stand-up Centurion again. Or Phalanx rather. So far, we have done 2 summons. The summon from Trudea and the Primera. Now what we're going to do is we're going to send with Lubellion's effect. Lubellion is going to add Magnamut. Magnamut is here in our hand. And now what we're going to do is we're going to target the Druid Worm. We're going to banish it. We're going to special the Magnamut. Magnamut triggers his end phase effect. Use tribute the Magnamut for Lubellion. And then you do Lubellion's effect. And with Lubellion, you're going to be placing Branded Regained. And if you counted the amount of summons, that is 4 summons in total that we have done. We did the summon of Trudea, the Primera, the Magnamut, and the Lubellion. So now what we can do is we set the Imperm, we set the Phalanx, we keep DD Crow in our hand. And during the end phase, what we can do is we can add Baldrake to our hand. So what does this end board do? So the things that this end board does is it gives us follow-up from Branded Regained. It gives us the ability to synchro into Legatia during our opponent's turn. And Legatia becomes a disruption. The Regain can reborn the Magnamut if your opponent ended up summoning. The Magnamut triggers for the end phase. You can banish like any of these. Like for example, we can banish Lubellion to summon Baldrake. The Branded Regained will put Lubellion back into the bottom of our deck to draw us 1 card. You also have the disruption from the DD Crow. You have disruption from Phalanx. You have disruption from Imperm. You have guaranteed follow-up for next turn with Trudea. And if the Legatia does not go away, the Legatia is going to spawn back Primera into your spell and trap zone in your end phase, which is another layer of follow-up. And you also have the disruption from Baldrake by tributing either Magnamut or the Legatia. So if we count properly, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disruptions. You have 1, 2, 3 layers of follow-up. And you have like the +1 from the Gatia as well. And this is all just to show you that Centurion has a lot of ways of just playing the game. This is not just a Calamity one-trick pony sort of deck. I think the Bystials are like something that gives you just a whole different dimension to your end boards and to your disruptions. And if you feel like you're facing an opponent where they're playing just safe and they're trying to play around like Calamity locking you, you see that the ceiling of their deck is almost at the same level as your deck, or you just want to play it very, very safe and you just want to like make sure you progress through the game, then this is like one option that you can take, because Centurion is one of those decks where it has a really really good grind game. Ha- the weakest problem is like getting their engine rolling if they get disrupted. One bright side about Centurion, as opposed to many other decks, is this deck is a lot more resilient to hand traps than other strategies. And in a format where people are just trading resources left and right, especially with hand traps, this deck is just very, very favorable. Uh, Post Legacy of Destruction, this deck is just going to be even more amazing because there are going to be way less cards that just deal with your end board or deal with your disruption. And that's pretty much a safe route that you can take, because trading resources is very, very important, but knowing the ceiling of your deck as opposed to your opponent's decks is also very important. Uh, the Snake Eye deck has a way higher ceiling than this deck, but because of the fact that we can play Calamity in our strategy, it makes it so we force our opponent to be at a lower pace than our deck. Adding to that, we have like other really neat interactions this deck has that not a lot of people know how to deal with. Like for example, a light dark immune Chaos Angel is something that not many decks can deal with, especially combo decks. You have like negation from Baron. You have access to SP Little Knight with its secondary effect. You have access to like a Ding, Typhon. If you want to clear your opponent's board, you have a board clear with this card. Same with the Sword Soul. If you just want to like combo off against your opponent, you have Dispater. This is basically all to tell you that Centurion is not a one-trick pony deck. Uh, this deck has a lot of ways of playing the game. If you want to play safe and you don't want to like lose to a lot of particular cards, you just go for these routes instead of doing Calamity Lock on your opponent. Because if your opponent does not know what your deck does properly, but they know like how to do common interactions, you can just find ways of just catching your opponent off guard and just play Centurion in a way that they were not expecting, and just make sure that you don't lose to certain cards or blowouts. But yeah, I hope you found this video informative and to your liking and understanding. Uh, we're only 2 weeks away till the release of Legacy of Destruction. Uh, by then, you're probably going to see an updated deck list involving this deck. But until then, keep practicing and keep dueling.